Hey guys, and welcome back to Free Plugin Friday, where we look at free plugins you can use in your productions. Now today we are looking at a free plugin from Initial Audio. Now Initial Audio have a bunch of really cool plugins such as Analog Pro and the Reverse, so I've decided to come up with a clipping plugin, and this time it's actually free. Now there are some cool features of this plugin. I've been messing around with it for about 10 minutes before doing this video, maybe 20 minutes. There are some cool features. There's some things that I'd like to see, but again, it is a free plugin. So kind of from what I've read on their website, this is a clipper that clips at 0 dB dBFS, so the peak volume of digital clipping, and then contains two types of saturation, positive and negative. They both sound very similar. They've got slight differences and the clipping sounds different as well. We're gonna go through it. There's some cool features such as a lufs meter. Now, I kind of want to say from the get-go, in my opinion, the loudness wars are kind of dead. So the need for clipping just to get loud is no longer needed and often ruins music. But there is something about limited dynamics and clipping that is kind of interesting, and it's a trend. If you listen to, example, Skrillex, that kind of dubstep's extremely loud, but it's part of the music. So we're kind of looking at a more of an EDM track here. It's sort of acid techno influenced. I think it's the best scenario for me where I want to use clipping to give some flavor. But having a lufs meter is quite useful just to see how loud we're getting it. And this thing can get loud. I did get positive RMS, which is insane. Now we're also going to be using Ozone 9 for two reasons. One, I want to keep the ceiling below 0 so that when I'm recording it in OBS like I am and editing and such, we're not getting clipping out of Cubase or clipping within kind of the virtual audio realm. That does mean that as we push it up, there may be some limiting, but the limiting is going to be a lot more transparent than pure digital clipping. But let's just go into it. We'll keep it bypass. I've just got this loop of kind of one of the drops, and we'll go through the controls. And then I'll talk about some of the things that I think this plugin needs. So this is without the plugin on. So you understand there's like 303 kind of synth, big kick, rolling bass. So let's turn it on. And we have input gain, threshold, saturation 1 and 2. And make sure these are at their lowest, which is 0.1. And let's just bring this threshold down. You might be able to hear it. So we're getting a bit of clipping there. What I don't quite understand is why it's going all the way down and this doesn't kind of show as much clipping and you don't hear it as much. Now, as we drive the input gain, you'll see that. And this scope is actually really useful. I do really like they gave us a scope. But this threshold, I'd like to know what's kind of working behind the scenes then, because it does seem like I'm crossing that threshold. I'm not getting a lot of clipping until I put the gain up. So let's put the gain up. Now, we're obviously going to get louder. And you'll start to see it now. You can see that there's more dynamics here as we push to that ceiling. And also the lufs are going up. Lufs or lufs, however you want to say them. So let's bring that threshold down. And now you can hear it. You can really hear it clipping on the kick and that bass. So let's try out these saturation parameters. It's the positive saturation. And the negative. Now my guess is positive and negative have to do with chopping the waveforms, like they're both asymmetrical saturation. I think it doesn't really say what the positive and negative mean. They do sound similar, but slightly different in how they handle the low end. But let's dial in a little bit of both. We won't go too far and bring the threshold up, kind of compare it there. -1. So now we've kind of got 0.572 LUFS and a lot less here. But this is where the problems kind of seep in. Now, a lot of people might use a clipper last, and you're saying, well, okay, so it clips at 0 dBFS. Now, that is a problem when it comes to going on streaming platforms where you're converting it to a lossy format. 0 dBFS generally means that there's intersample peaks above 0. And that's why I brought up ozone. So if we look here, this is what we're going to do is bring back the input gain a little bit. And have a look here at this peak meter. So with it off, I am getting peaks above 0 on the input. When I turn it on, I'm still getting peaks above 0 on the input. So what would have been really cool is just a ceiling control, just to change it. That's what I thought Threshold would do, but it doesn't seem so. Threshold does that on a few other clipping plugins where it brings down the ceiling where it starts to clip. This doesn't seem to do that. It introduces clipping, but it doesn't actually affect the volume. We have reduced the peak a little bit. But it's still pretty much a 0. So just a ceiling control, just so you can take it to -1. We're trying to get around that. But for me, I always like to just put a limiter or a maximizer after clipping anyway, even if it's just stopping true peaks for this reason. So that's why here we've got a true peak limiter here. So what I wanted to do now is kind of show you, I know it has a LUFS here, but it doesn't show the difference. So what we're going to do is set it up so it's basically unity. And have a look at the LUFS. So, bypassed, we're above 0 on the peak. The limiter here is obviously taking care of that, so the output is fine. But raw, we're going in, we can't get any louder, we're going to clip. Now here, we're actually well below. We can push it up. And what I'm going to do is push it up until that peak is about 0. So the limiter is not doing anything yet. So no, we're not comparing loudness and we're not comparing RMS. What we're doing is comparing the loudness at the same peak volume. So basically the clipper is working to get louder without actually getting the peaks any louder. So this is bypassed again. Just take a look here. I'm going to reset this. So it's about minus 10.8 LUFS with a little bit over peaking, right? But that's kind of like intersample peaks, and they're on. Now this is too saturated. Bring that threshold up, bring this down a little bit. And we've kind of gained three LUFS there. Now, like I said at the beginning, for me, it's not about loudness for the sake of loudness. Well, once it goes to, iTunes or whatever, as long as you're around minus 12, it's all going to be the same volume. In fact, this is going to get turned down. It's more about how it sounds and that kind of limiting of the dynamic range. So I've got this gain control here. So what I kind of want to do is get a similar LUFS by using these together. So I'm going to kind of tune it by ear. And again, we have a look here. So we're going to try and get the same LUFS and compare if it sounds better or not. It's going to be a bit of a mismatch of bypassing and unbypassing, but you should be able to get the idea. So let's bypass both. So this is, about -10. So let's get it. About -10. So we're talking about the same loudness now. So, what Apple Music and all of them will see as the same loudness, but how different is the tone? And we've got a bit of fattening going on. What we could do is bring the threshold down a little bit. Takes a bit too many transients out. Now, you got to be very careful here because distortion can sound nice, but then an entire song, it's a bit ear fatiguing. Really, I'd only want it to clip this extreme at the loudest part of the song, and have the other bits kind of brought back a little bit, maybe even automated, especially when we're coming up to like -5 LUFS. Like most songs I like about -8 to -14, to be honest. But it does add something. There is something nice about this. Now, this sounds very different to the other two clippers I have. I think because of this type of saturation and it's a soft clip and whatever's going on, all those clippers, they all seem to sound a little bit different, especially in soft clipping. Hard clipping seems to get a lot kind of closer to sounding similar. And this obviously just you don't have to use it just on the master bus. And that's what I really want to check out now is I'm just going to drop it on a kick drum to see what we can do there. But like I said, there are a few things, just a few small features that would make this plugin 10 times better. A ceiling control, I think, is probably the best, or some kind of master output control, just so you aren't clipping the next plugin or whatever with intersample peaks or any issues like that. Basically allows it to be gain staged, not lost, and not cause problems. And a dry wet, because I love that for clipping. So you can let some transients back in, but still get the flavor. And possibly some kind of management of the low end going into the clipping. Because as you can hear when I push these up, in something like this is very low end heavy, that distorts first and it can get really muddy very quickly. So while we're talking about that, let's get just the kick. And what I'm going to do is solo the kick and really push it. And let's see. A few clicks and pops, but that's just because I'm recording with OBS as well. So ignore them. Okay, that's where it really starts to distort. That's actually really nice. For techno and stuff, that's... Take it back a little bit. Again, this is where dry wet would be really cool, just so I could get some of that transient back. It just adds this kind of mid-low weight that I really like. And obviously extends it, it's distorting the hell out of it. But it's not nasty. There it starts to get nasty. That just sounds like a club, you know, and you're kind of breaking the speakers a little bit. It's just nice. So I'm going to leave it there. I mean, we could go through every single source, but I think that is a kind of an hour-long video just with a clipper. But I really like the sound of this. Like I said, there's those features that would just make it so much more usable, but you could all just get something like any gain control. You can get any plugin that has just volume that doesn't do anything. There's a bunch of free plugins that have gain. To get around it, it's free. And yeah, just some really nice quality if you're going for that kind of pumped up sound that a lot of EDM and hip hop as well, depending on certain types of hip hop, are really using that kind of sound as well. It's the idea that you're blasting speakers or you are actually clipping somewhere on the chain. It's less so now just purely to get loudness and kind of be like, well, I can put up with it sounding worse. This is kind of intended to make it sound better. Obviously, that's very subjective, but to have a certain sound. So go check it out. Initial Audio, it's free. They have a bunch of other plugins. I haven't really tried any of them. I might buy some of them, like maybe Analog Pro at some point and give that a go. But yeah, definitely a plugin that I'm going to start using, I think, on maybe just some individual sources and in mastering when working on some EDM tracks. So thanks for watching. It's been another free plugin Friday. Keep your eye out for some more, and I'll see you